Okay, so I got all the parts smoothed out. Now I'm going to drill into these parts so that I can insert the joints. Now I got this idea from a lot of model makers, especially from people who work with miniatures. They do a lot of pinning. This technique is called pinning, but it's a pretty different from the way that I'm going to do it because this is wax. And I thought, well, wax is pretty hard. I mean, it's like comparable to plastic or a hard material. And since this isn't miniature work, I'm using action figure, larger than action figure sized models that I'm going to need a bigger bit than what I think they're called vice pins. Not exactly. I don't remember. I think that's what they're called, but they're really tiny, and they have to be because you're working with the tiny parts. But since I work bigger, then I decided, well, I went to the Harbor Freight. I went to the hardware store, and I found a bunch of bits, and I got this handle. I can't remember what it's called, but I thought it was good enough. It was okay for the price, and I decided to use that instead. And what this does is it creates uh, a channel for the joint to be inserted. So because after this I'm going to, once I have my holes created, I'm going to heat up the joint with a small torch, and I'm going to insert it inside that hole. If I didn't have that hole in there and I didn't have that channel, it would be kind of difficult to push it all the way inside there. So that's what I have those holes in there for. And also it helps me to guide it pretty much in the center. So I'm using a toothbrush to clean off the bits, little shavings that the bit is creating. It was making a mess. It was making a pretty good mess in my workspace, so I decided to get a plastic tub, a small plastic tub, about 12 inches in length, a couple inches deep, and I put all my wax shavings in there. Instead, I try to conserve as much of this wax as I can because it's so expensive. Every piece is precious. Yeah, this process takes a bit of time, but once you got everything together, it'll be much worth it. It'll be very, very worth it. There's my torch, my small torch. It takes butane fuel or some kind of fuel used to fill up lighters. I kind of wish I had a self-igniting torch. That would have been great, but this was only 14 bucks, so it does good for the job. It does pretty well. You have to turn on the switch, and it blows out um, the gas or whatever it is, and that lighter I strike it, light it up, and the torch comes out. So I would suggest having a fire extinguisher next to you at all times when you're working with this. Working with heated tools. I think the flame was on too high, or it blew itself out. If you have it full, like really full, there's a little knob, a little switch on there that has a plus or minus sign on it. If it's closer to the plus sign, the torch will shoot out more. And if it's strong enough, it will blow itself out. Okay, so I'm heating up this end where it's going to be inserted into the wax. And then when you put it in there, it's going to melt that wax, and it's going to surround it. It's going to pull around that metal. And having that channel in there makes it easier for it to go in. Even with that channel, it's still not all the way in. I have to readjust my camera. I try to turn off the torch as much as I can so I can preserve fuel. So I'm going to heat up the torch again, because I have to push that joint deeper into there. And also it cleans up the surrounding puddle up wax, flattens it out a bit. Like, you can heat up that joint at the metal, and it will heat up you can heat up the exposed metal, and the heat will travel all the way down. Let's see. So I'm going to heat it up again, so that wax will flatten out, make it nice and pretty. think that I want that end to be, I want it to be embedded pretty well in that part, because I don't intend on having it come out. So I'm just going to leave it, I think I'm going to leave it in there. Or maybe I'm going to pull it out. I don't remember. Oh yes, I'm going to pull it out. I forgot. I probably should have left I probably should have left it in there a little bit longer. But if I leave it in too long, the harder it is to pull out the wire, like really hard. So you have to time it. You have to time it as good as you can. So after pulling out that piece of wire, it left behind a keyhole that's pretty much the same shape, irregular shape as the key. So it works as attaching and detaching. I think, yeah, I heated up the other side. I didn't want to move the camera again. It was a pain in the butt moving it, so I did it off camera. See, it just melts it. It's a little off center too, so I'm going to try to readjust it once I heat that sucker up. I'm going to heat it up some more. I think that part is going to stay in. So I don't need to make a hole. I don't need to make, I guess you can call them registration holes and keys. And just pushing that in, I guess. And there's an arm, pretty much, that you can detach the forearm and the upper arm and reattach them. In that space right there is where you make your you bend it, you pose it, and I think it works pretty well. It works in a pinch.